Every morning at 6:40 a.m., for almost 3 years, Daniel sat at the small table by the window. Same seat. Same order. Black coffee, 2 sugars, 1 blueberry muffin warm just enough so the berries bled into the dough. He tipped well but never made a show of it. He thanked her every single time, looking her in the eye like the words mattered. "Morning, Claire," he'd say, even on the days when she felt invisible. And then one Monday he didn't show up. At first Claire didn't notice. The breakfast rush had its own rhythm. Steam hissing, plates clinking, the low hum of early conversations. But when 6:50 passed and the window table stayed empty, something felt off, like a skipped heartbeat. She told herself it was nothing. People miss days. People get sick. People move. She wiped the counter, poured another coffee and kept going. The second day she noticed. The third day she worried. By the end of the week she was scanning the street every time the bell chimed, pretending she wasn't. Her co-workers teased her gently. "Your boyfriend stood you up," one joked. Claire laughed but it didn't land. Daniel wasn't her boyfriend. He was just constant. In a life where everything shifted, rent hikes, schedule changes, her mother's health scares, Daniel had been a fixed point. Claire was 32, a waitress in a town outside Seattle that tourists described as charming and locals called expensive. She worked mornings and picked up extra shifts whenever she could. Her dad had passed when she was a teenager. Her mom lived 2 states away and needed more help than Claire could afford to give. The cafe was her second home, and the regulars were a kind of quiet family. Daniel especially felt like someone who saw her without asking for anything. He was in his early 40s maybe, always neatly dressed, hair combed back, a watch that looked older than expensive. He read paperback books with cracked spines and wrote notes in the margins. Sometimes he brought a newspaper, folding it with care. He never talked about his job, never complained. But on hard mornings he'd say, "You look tired today, Claire." And it felt less like judgment and more like concern. Once, when she was fighting tears over a call from her mom, he'd slid a napkin across the table with a simple message, "You're doing your best." It had stayed in her apron pocket for months. 2 weeks passed. The window table remained empty. Claire started asking questions she told herself were casual. "You seen Daniel lately?" she asked the mail carrier who stopped in every Friday. He shook his head. She asked Mrs. Alvarez, who came for chamomile tea after her morning walks. "No." She asked the guy who worked at the hardware store down the block. Nothing. It was like Daniel had vanished. She told herself to let it go. People don't owe us explanations. But the absence gnawed at her. On a slow Tuesday, she found herself warming a blueberry muffin without realizing it. When the smell hit her, sweet and familiar, she felt a lump rise in her throat. She wrapped it up, labeled it with a marker, "window table," and slid it into the staff fridge, then stood there too long staring at the door. That night she couldn't sleep. She thought about the way Daniel always paid in cash, the way he tucked the receipt into his book like a bookmark. She remembered the faint scar along his knuckle, the wedding ring he never wore but had once mentioned losing. She remembered a morning when he'd said, "Routine is a gift," and she'd laughed, not understanding then how fragile routines really were. The next morning she came in early. She cleaned the window table until it shone. She placed a small handwritten sign reserved, something she'd never done before. Her manager raised an eyebrow but didn't stop her. "Just a regular," Claire said, and the word felt heavier than it should have. He didn't come. At 7:15 the bell chimed and a woman stepped in, rain clinging to her coat. She looked around, uncertain, and then her eyes landed on the window table. She froze. Claire noticed the way her face changed, like a door opening to a room full of memories. The woman approached the counter slowly. "Hi," she said. "I'm sorry to bother you. I was hoping." Her voice wavered. "Does a man named Daniel still come here?" Claire's heart stuttered. "He used to," she said carefully. "Every morning. We've been worried." The woman closed her eyes just for a moment. When she opened them they were glossy. "I'm his sister," she said. "My name's Margaret." Claire stepped out from behind the counter before she realized she was doing it. She gestured to the window table. "Please," she said. "Sit." Margaret sat, smoothing her hands over the tabletop, touching the glass, the chair, like she was cataloging the world. He loved this place, she said softly. Said it felt safe. Claire swallowed. Is he okay? Margaret took a breath that trembled. Daniel passed away 3 weeks ago. The words landed like a dropped plate, sharp, final. Claire felt the room tilt. Sounds faded. The cafe kept moving around her, but she was suddenly very still. I'm so sorry, she said, the phrase inadequate and automatic. He had a heart condition, Margaret continued. Kept it quiet. Didn't want to be a burden. He collapsed on his way to work. They said it was quick. Claire nodded because nodding was something to do. Her eyes burned. She thought of the empty table, the untouched mornings, the muffin in the fridge. She thought of the napkin in her apron pocket, long since worn soft. Margaret reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. He asked me to come here, she said. If anything happened, he said. He said there was someone who should know. She slid the envelope across the table. Claire stared at it, afraid of what it might contain and afraid not to open it. Her name was written on the front in careful letters. Claire. Her hand shook as she opened it. Inside was a folded letter and a $20 bill, creased and worn. The letter read, Claire, if you're reading this, then I didn't make it back for my coffee. I'm sorry to worry you. I just wanted you to know that your kindness mattered more than you'll ever realize. On days when getting out of bed felt impossible, I came here because you treated me like I belonged. You never knew it, but this place and you gave me something to hold on to. Thank you for seeing me. Please take this for the muffins I owe you. Keep the window table bright. It means more than you think. Daniel. Claire's tears fell onto the paper, blurring the ink. She pressed the letter to her chest, feeling something crack open inside her. Margaret watched quietly, her own eyes wet. He talked about you, Margaret said. After his divorce, after our parents passed, he was lonely. He said the cafe was the one place where his name mattered. Claire laughed through her tears, a small broken sound. He mattered to us, she said. We just didn't know how much. Margaret smiled sadly. We rarely do. They sat together for a while sharing stories. Margaret told her about Daniel's job at the public library, about his love of old mystery novels and rainy mornings. Claire told her about the napkin, the muffin, the way Daniel always noticed when she was tired. The cafe buzzed around them, but the window table felt like its own quiet world. When Margaret left, she hugged Claire tightly. Thank you, she said, for being kind to my brother. After that day, Claire changed small things. She kept the window table clean and open. She put a tiny vase there with fresh flowers every Monday. She started learning the names of every regular, really learning them, asking about their lives. She wrote notes on napkins when she sensed someone needed it. You're not alone. This too shall pass. You matter. Months later, a young man took the window seat. He ordered black coffee, no sugar. Claire smiled and brought it over. Welcome, she said. First time. He nodded. I just moved here. This place feels friendly. Claire glanced at the chair, the glass, the street beyond. She thought of routines and how fragile they were and how powerful. It is, she said. And so do you.